Hello, Saturday. I'll probably just make this a video, and the reading I'm going to do from the Financial Times. The link will be there. If I don't put anything else there, I will have read it anyway. It's Gillian Tett, who you know that I adore. She's been still writing wonderful stuff for the Financial Times. This is just another one. She is a trained anthropologist, I think, and it shows often in her posts. This one, interestingly enough, has got quite a lot to do with thinking, and the implication definitely in this article is that we can think better when we know the words for things. She is obviously a believer that humans think in words, which as Axel and Lyle and other people that follow me in another place know that I do not believe is true. I do not think that humans do think in words, but that we'll put aside. And I'll note also here before I kick off that I'm having trouble with my internet and emails. So if you don't think that I've replied or something to something that you've sent or commented, or it's probably to do with that. I've really messed up my emails. I've got quite a few email accounts and I was trying to get them all into one place and now found that it's ridiculously difficult. You need permission for this and that and the other. I need permission to do things. Anyway, I'm having trouble with the emails, and the internet seems to go in and out quite a lot lately. Anyway, let's go to Gillian. Towards the end of this article, I might say something that might seem a bit ridiculous, but I have given it thought. But not in words. Right. During the crazy credit boom of 2006 and 7, Paul Tucker, now Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, tried to sound an alarm about shadow banks. I didn't yesterday because of my problems. Thursdays, this is referring back to Thursday and shadow banks. In a couple of prescient speeches, he warned that Russian doll finance, or vehicular finance, as he dubbed the shadowy network of non-bank finance entities in London, could pose systemic risks, which it could, and it did. In the event, his comments had little impact. Few listeners had a clue what Russian doll finance meant. But this week, Mr. Tucker, finally got his wish. I went into more on Thursday. The FSB, Financial Stability Board, issued a report that called for more oversight of the shadow banking world and its $67 trillion of assets. Now, I'd like to read the whole article, but I copyright can't. But I'll read as much as I can. So we've missed a bit out, and then we go for behind that Russian doll tale, there is a powerful principle that sheds light on past policy mistakes and highlights remaining challenges. The problem is one of tunnel vision, or what one might describe as silos in policy making. Silos is what Gillian has always called them, as far as I know. 3, 4, 5 years ago, she calls them silos, where you get an office that specialises in that, and it does that. The next office along specialises in that and does that. They don't generalise. And if there are things that fall in between, they fall in between, because that office hasn't got on its door that it does that, and this office doesn't do that either. It does this and it does that, but it doesn't do the other. Okay. Several decades ago, when people such as Mr. Tucker started their careers, institutions in general, but in this particular article, such as the Bank of England, had a generalist creed. Employees moved between departments, between offices. Graduates were hired from a range of disciplines, and senior Bank of England officials were expected to watch for trouble by using instinct and peripheral vision as much as models. You know, those are words, instinct and peripheral vision. We know what she's talking about. Those words don't explain it very well, but we know what she's talking about. and hopefully I'll come back to that in the end. But when the Bank of England gained independence in 1997, PhD-wielding economists became more dominant, and specialist macroeconomic and monetary policy analysis turned into mental silos, mental and physical silos, separated from the grubby weeds of finance or markets. These geniuses on their computers, and that's hopefully what I'll link to as well, had their models of what they thought the world was, and they'd be running their computer models to try to do this or that, and the real world, the grubby weeds of finance or markets, was out there, and they were just cleanly modelling. Missed out a bit more. This is quite interesting. Indeed, it was not until Paul McCulley, if you know him, he's a nice looking fella, sounds good, so he must have been the genius at PIMCO, coined the phrase shadow banking at the Jackson Hole Economic Conference in August 2007. Paul McCulley. Then that term caught on, and the policymakers finally had a way to discuss vehicles such as CDOs and SIVs, that's collateralized debt obligations, and SIVs, special investment vehicles, providing a catchy label. In other words, helped shift the policy debate because they had a word. The idea here is that if you don't have the word, the mind can't grab onto it, and it can't be discussed between individuals, because if you've got all different words for the same thing, it's hard to know if you're referring to the same thing. And if it's a new, different thing that brains don't generally want to discuss, it's preferably forgotten. Right, the end of the article already, and I've had to miss out another load. But while this is laudable, what Tucker's doing, the sad fact remains that the problem of silos and mental blind spots has not gone away. On the contrary, it is intrinsic to any large complex system. Any large complex system gets silos established, because that's structural, pyramidical management structure. So the question investors and everyone else now addresses is what other issues continue to fall through the cracks between the silos. What about cyber security, pensions, or financial infrastructure? Just 3 examples that she throws in. Or is there something else we are ignoring because it is outside our mental map? Ideas would be gratefully received, or better still, sent to the FPC, or its US or Eurozone counterparts, preferably with a catchy label that is as powerful as shadow banks. And what she's saying is, you've got to give them the label as well that's catchy, so everyone can discuss it and it can get discussed. But this is where I was going to come to at the end. The whole world with its computers has gone silo mad. It's brilliant and efficient and modern and is brilliant for building complex systems. But it lacks what the old-fashioned Bank of England had that she was talking about there, or anyone that knows, old enough that knows that an old boss was not at a computer doing something. And this is where words come in a lot. A lot of what people do now is word driven. This is going to be too difficult to explain. We don't think in words, we think in ideas, and those ideas are then given labels, and then we communicate with each other, and those labels are regulated, so we ensure that the idea that we have is the equivalent of somebody else's idea. So the label that we use is appropriate for intercommunication. But a lot of what thinking does, there's a comment that's just come up, I think it was Axel, says, why does the brain, start thinking about something subconsciously, that subconscious thing, and pop the answer, let's say, into consciousness 2 weeks later, when it could be then utterly useless. The time could have come and gone for it. This isn't the time. I've got an answer for that, but we don't need it here. So a lot of what happens is that the subconscious throws an idea forward. The idea is a strengthening, and it's like an aid memoir. It's a feedback, part of a feedback loop. It comes to consciousness, which goes back into subconsciousness again, and it thinks about it like this. But a lot of it's trips the loops. It's impossible to explain because we don't have the language that agrees with what our ideas are about subconsciousness and consciousness. But a lot of people now are working, this would be better, for an end. They know almost what they're working for, like me, to get my bloody emails to work properly. But and even the bosses are doing this. They are trying to make it so this works better with this many people for this bottom line and this top line, and this must wastage and this is input and that output to get a result, as opposed to an old boss that would come in late in the day, go out for a very long lunch at the club with friends, or might just poddle off for a game of golf. Now, the reason I've put this in, because that is not the way things are run anymore. Things are run via computers in these little silos of people that think they know what they're doing. But it was not a genius system, but it was an effective system to have someone, you can say that they were privileged or whatever, that there was either the owner, the boss, or whoever it might be, that could just come and go, could drift into a meeting, listen without pushing, and be able to absorb. As in, a lot of people now are going, I'll go the other way. They don't just listen. They've got ideas, and they're always on top of things, and they're pushing in all the time with the ideas that they've got and trying to mould, and these are the conscious ideas that are coming, and they're being then pushed out, as opposed to what I know a few of us do on Over the Peak, and what an old-fashioned boss might do is just casually absorb information. More information, not having a set goal to say anything, to be anything, to do anything, to make of anything, just absorbing the information. If you're the CEO, it might be you're absorbing the information from the company. You walk around, you get information not particularly for something, but if you're a naturally gifted CEO, you find yourself in the right place at the right time to get the right information. But you're not searching for it, you don't know you've got it when you've got it, but you can go to a meeting and then you will just know that what the company is doing is wrong. It just is a knowing thing. But what happens now, these silos, they are looking to know things, and it's just not the same thing. Bit of frustration. I don't feel like I'm getting this across, because what I'm kind of saying, the older way of the privileged owner, the privileged boss, that would waltz off and seemingly live the life of Riley and come in and just do a couple of hours, was perhaps the best way. That as long as they had the right sort of mind that was open to information flowing in, and the subconscious, although it was playing golf or eating lunch, as long as it was relaxed over lunch and not worrying about which cutlery to use, the subconscious of that mind was working on it, not throwing things up as ideas all the time and worrying over those ideas on feedback loops, might not even think about work at all, would think about lunch, would think about the golf, but the subconscious would be working on the problems of the real job, which was being the CEO, the owner, the manager. And when it came to the really big, important overall picture thing, they could see it. They could see that the direction of the whole firm was going in the wrong direction, or they could see the part of the firm was getting too dangerous, whereas the people that were right up to their noses on their screens couldn't see it at all because their models didn't say that that was that. And as long as they had the power to come in, tap the table and say, that ends, that was a better system. But that has gone completely. And what we have now are these silos of people with their noses on computer screens, and they just do not have the big picture anymore. Even the people that are paid to have the big picture do not have the big picture. It's only people like Gillian Tett who's allowed to look at things from far away, and if it interests her, she zooms in and finds the facts, then zooms away again and comes in a kind of disinterested way. But she's got a very active mind, obviously, and subconsciously she's thinking about these things all the time. She would be a much more useful regulator than most all of the regulators. Tucker and Adair Turner have got a certain amount of disinterestedness, that they're not plugged directly into the system and drawn too tight into the trees that they can't see what's going on in the wood. They can't see the wood for the trees, and that's quite enough of that. So I think until we can let the people be privileged enough to stand back from things and get an overall picture, these people that are trying to do the job will not be able to do the job of having the good overview. There are more of us on Over the Peak with a better overview of the financial system than most all of the Treasury officials and government officials and overseers that are paid around the world. No, that's not quite right, but you get the idea. It's because we are not involved, we can see the picture probably better than they can. You see it most from, I've got almost annoyed with the European negotiations that were going on, but you could see in a disinterested way the problems that they'd got themselves into just by their being politicians, that they're being forced into manoeuvres which were ultimately going to be bad for everybody, but they just had to do them because that's what being a politician is. And it's the same for being a Treasury official working for the government, or a central banker, or an overseer of banking or capital finance. It's very difficult for them. They're drawn into it. They can't see the picture. They don't know the picture. They're too involved. That's enough for Saturday. So I'll try and keep up with the comments, but if I don't, you know it's something to do with me being ignorant about getting my bloody emails sorted out. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.